Here are 5 things that I wish I knew before starting my worm farm. The first thing you have to decide is location. Are you going to have it outside or inside? As you can see, our bin is indoors, but it didn't start out that way. We had our worm bin outside for almost a full year before we were finally able to bring it inside. And the reason why we brought it inside is because with red wiggler composting worms, you want to maintain their temperature between about 60 and 80 degrees, and it makes it a lot easier whenever you're in a temperature controlled environment. So if you've recently picked yourself up a new worm bin, I recommend putting it inside a heated and cooled garage or inside your basement or even underneath your sink. The next thing I wish I had a better understanding of when I started was moisture control of your worm bin. When trying to determine the moisture level of your worm bin and what it needs to be, it's actually not as difficult as it may seem. You just don't want it to be too dry or too wet. So if the bedding or the worms are starting to look a little dried out, then you need to add some water. And the way to tell if you've added too much is you can take a handful of the bedding and just squeeze it. And if you get any water coming out, then it's too wet. And as you can see, this stuff is the perfect moisture level right now. One problem that is easy to run into whenever it comes to moisture control is how much of that water is getting to the bottom of your bin and has nowhere to go after that. If you don't have a proper drainage of your bin, then a lot of water can pool up in the bottom and cause big problems later on down the road. So as you can see with our bin, we have what's called a continuous flow worm bin. We have PVC pipe on the bottom, and that leaves openings between the PVC for the water to drain and also for us to collect our castings. The next thing I wish I knew was exactly how much do I need to feed my worms. So let's take a look at our worm bin now and see how they're doing on food. So we got a variety of different foods in our worm bin right now, which includes coffee grounds, avocados, raspberries, some eggshells, and maybe a few other things in there as well. You don't see any of the worms right now just because I've had the plastic off a little bit, so they've all kind of gone down into the bedding for now. So how much food should you be giving them? Well, you need to give them about 2 to 3 days worth. If they take longer than 2 to 3 days to finish the food, then don't give them as much next time. But if they're finishing it in a day or less, then you can probably go ahead and give them a little bit more. So 1,000 worms will weigh roughly 1 pound, and a worm will eat about half of its body weight in food per day. So if you have 1,000 worms, then they're going to eat approximately half a pound of food every day. So what's the point of having a worm bin to begin with? Well, most people get a worm bin so that they can start collecting worm castings for their plants and garden. Well, how do you collect the castings? So we showed you earlier with our worm bin, we have PVC pipe running along the bottom of the bin, and we use a rake to scrape in between those PVC pipes, and that allows the castings to fall through. So then we collect those and we run those through our sifter. And what this allows is for the worm castings to fall through the screen. We collect those while the worms go out the other side, and then we can throw the worms and anything they haven't broken down back into the worm bin. Now, this is for a lot more castings than probably what you're going to be dealing with. So we actually started with this right here, and you can buy one of these on Amazon, and this is going to be plenty for you to work with to get the castings that you're needing from your small worm bin at home. So the last thing that you need to figure out before you get your worm bin is storage location. And that's where you're going to keep your worm bin, and also where you're going to keep the castings after the worms have produced them. Well, you may think, well, I'm going to use the worm castings. Well, let's say it's the dead of winter and you want to save those castings for springtime, you're going to need somewhere to put them. But it's an easy solution. If you can keep them in a 5-gallon bucket, or you can do like us and keep them in 1-ton bags. As long as you do these steps right here, you'll be able to keep your worm castings for up to a year or longer. Thank you guys for watching. And if you guys have any helpful tips, leave a comment down below and we'll see you next time.